Diddly hey, neighborino, it is Jim Dempsey, assembling brick by brick an artifice of bullshit, or an oral history of death metal, if you like. Now, for today, I said to Phil, why don't we do a top 10 death metal albums? He said, your top 10? And I said, no, the top 10. He said, do you have a script for that? And I said, bro, watch this. Off the dome. Alright. What are the 10 most significant death metal albums? Number 1, Altars of Madness. There's a lot of retcon about death, scream bloody gore, and I've said elsewhere that it's retcon, it's irrelevant. It's historical revisionism. People who are old enough to remember what was talked about, what the buzz was before the buzz was online. Death was compared to Morbid Angel. Morbid Angel was fucking huge. Altars of Madness is the album around which death metal coalesces as a idea in full bloom. It is where people stop talking about death metal as the lyrical topical subject matter and focus in on the sound of something specific. Number 2, Deicide's first album. A similar phenomenon. Just if Altars is the pinnacle of technical at that moment, that first Deicide may still be about the pinnacle of feral. And again, creepy old guys on the bus, we're not talking to you about death. You gotta check out Scream Bloody Gore. No. They'd stop you and be like, oh, you like heavy metal, kid? You should listen to Deicide. Then, you would, get anally raped by that guy in a alleyway. And he was right about Deicide. Raise your hands if you got HIV from that guy. Number 3, Left Hand Path. Full disclosure, I don't know if I've ever actually listened to this album all the way through. I don't hear the menace in it. It is indisputably in the top 5. Just, no one questions that. I don't question that. This kid that we knew that listened to like ska music knew Left Hand Path. Actually, I don't know if you knew Left Hand Path. You knew Wolverine Blues, but you wouldn't have known that one without Left Hand Path. So we're gonna slide that over to Left Hand Path for purposes here. That kid, funny story, knew a guy that he met at a ska show, Frank Watkins, and this was about 1997, and Frank was telling him, yeah, I used to play in a band called Obituary. That's one of those things where they try to sweep it under the rug now, but that was also a huge moment in death metal, or in the case may be, as far away from death metal as they could get. Takes us to number 4, Cause of Death. This is pretty much just those big 4 names where, at that era, if you had heard death metal, this was likely what you'd heard. If you were listening to death metal, you'd heard more than that, certainly. But if you just were on the periphery and knew of it, then you were going to know Morbid Angel, or Entombed, or Deicide, or Obituary. And Cause of Death is the album that everyone remembers. Your boy, of course, raises the contention that cover art is fucking paramount in this sort of thing for this very reason, because is this a better album than Slowly We Rot? Well, yes, there is that too. But I like Slowly We Rot more. I'm just going to say it. And since I'm tired of this one, let's move on to number 5. Tomb. Because Cannibal is obviously in this list, and Tomb is the album that put them on the map. Once again, cover art is paramount. But there is also the song, and the movie, and yeah, I mean, what more do I really need to say about this? You do a top 10 death metal albums, it's pretty much indisputable that you're looking at Tomb as a contender alongside the other previously mentioned ones. What are we at here? 6? Let's throw in Effigy of the Forgotten, because a big thing that's going to make you a top 10 contender is how many subgenres did you spawn with your record? And how many variants of slam are we up to by now? That's just from one riff they had. We can go into the impact that they had on the just brutal death metal in general, given some of the limitations on their contemporaries. But we don't, well, you know what. Honorable mentions didn't make the list. Immolation, Dawn of Possession. It's almost comical to think it now, this far on into the game, but back in 1996, the one-note vocal thing would really hold you back, unless you had the note. So, Chris Barnes could transcend it, but also, Barnes varied it from album to album and went further and further down with his note. Immolation really got held back a lot for just the vocals. Incantation was always, throughout the 90s, regarded commonly as second tier, but Immolation would have transcended a lot sooner than they both did together in later years, but for those vocals. So, that said, Effigy, one-note vocals, yeah, but what a fucking note. I personally think Pierced from Within maybe deserves a more primary spot as the significant entry in the Suffocation catalog, but I don't listen to slam, so that's probably my bias poking through there. What do we got? 7? 6? Are we at? I've lost count. Let's do Heartwork, because albums that spawn genres, regrettably, and yeah, all of that melodic stuff is technically traced back to Carcass. I don't hold it against them, but the fact remains that for that alone, Heartwork is the Carcass entry that goes in the top 10. On that note, Slaughter of the Soul, another album I have never listened to all the way through. I like Early at the Gates. This is a bit polished to me, a bit on the nose. I was sketched from the word go, dare I say. But even more regrettably, the In Flames of the world and all of that ilk, we owe it all to this. And if not even that, then certainly a whole wave of metalcore bands that I could barely even think of examples, the names of. Killswitch Engage. And everything that spawns from that world. I have contentions about this, but the historical record does trace it back to Slaughter of the Soul. So yeah, definite belonger. And what did that put us up to, Phil? We're at 8? All right. I've got 2 shots left. Coming in at the bridesmaid position, I'm going to slot Covenant because a contention of yours truly is just that. Morbid Angel is the significant entity in death metal, the one that has several options that can be considered indisputable contenders for top 10, and also the album that took Cold Lake off the fucking map. Morbid Angel is the big fish in the pond, no matter how big the pond gets. So, Covenant, by dint of that video on Beavis and Butthead, and just what an impact that had in terms of commercial exposure, because, again, this ties back to why Altars beats Scream Bloody Gore, and why both just totally moot anything such as Abominations or Horrified, because you have to have that commercial exposure to even really count. Otherwise, you're just circle jerking with the other guys in the music department. So, quick honorable mentions here on the way out. 6 Feet Under, followed up as the Carcass Entombed obituary that you would have heard of if you heard death metal. So, early 90s, if someone knew death metal, they knew Morbid Angel. But later 90s, if they knew death metal, they knew 6 Feet Under. And if they listened to shitty metal, you would know immediately because they would say, oh yeah, I like 6 Feet Under and Cradle of Filth. They didn't really have an album, though. First I came around to it was Big D said to me, do you know 6 Feet Under? And I said, I do not. Well, that's the combined badassness of Cannibal Corpse and Obituary. And mind you, this was before Warpath, so technically he wasn't wrong on this. And what album stands out as a possible contender? So, sales aside, press aside, 6 Feet Under, they get no love here. But honorable mention because I did think Maximum Violence sufficed as a sufficient entry for the category of the second Massacre album, in lieu of the one that we actually got. And that takes us to number 10. Things that were definitive or foundational in terms of what comes after, the doors that it opens. You got to give it to Focus, because another thing that a little bit maybe lost to history for those that weren't there at the time is just how big Cynic was. Great in the sense of significant, if not great in the sense of good. The anticipation for this album compared to the reception for this album was one of those things that was legendary until Morbid Angel took it off the map. So, I think that about covers that one, and Phil will hopefully type that up and drop it in the comments or the description box below, and it'll be there for you to peruse over and call me out on, and that's what we got for today. So, thanks for watching, I suppose, and